There are not many pieces of footwear out there that have been talked about as much as the Nike and Hyperice Hyperboot, both for the technology that's in it, if it actually does what it's advertised to do, and I think most importantly, is it worth the $900 price tag that comes along with it? Well, I cut them open and I think I got some answers to all those questions. Let's get into it. And yes, Hyperice did send me a pair of these to check out. However, this video is by no means sponsored. All opinions, good, bad, and indifferent, as you will find out pretty soon, are all my own. Now, honestly, if you look at the marketing of the Hyperboot, there are so many claims to them, it's kind of hard to know where to start. But I guess I'll start with the actual just shoe portion. Can you just wear it as a regular shoe, as you can see in some of the marketing material? The answer is yes. The rocker on it is just about perfect in terms of getting a shoe this clunky to be able to move okay. I really had no problems walking around these. If you watch any of my recent shoe reviews over on the Shoe Garage channel, I was wearing this during all the reviews. I had these on for several days, just kind of around the house. At work, I would wear them in between patients. I didn't wear them into the rooms. I didn't feel like having that conversation over and over and over again. But both with just the compression mode on, the heat plus, heat plus compression, or just, I just had walking around in them a few times. Honestly, they're not difficult to get around, and they come in size ranges. So I kind of thought I was right in the middle of the range. I'm like, this is gonna feel a little clunky, and no, not really. It's really not bad whatsoever. Now the uppers on these things house the bladders for the compression as well as the heating elements. So they are very bulky in the ankle. And then in the forefoot, it isn't elastic, but it almost feels like it, just how the entry into the shoe, it's because it's so far down into the shoe, so it's really easy entry into them. And then you get one strap where the bladders come over top of each other, and then you get the two other straps that kind of give a little bit more compression onto your anterior ankle, so the thing kind of is able to compress around you. And then looking at it open, you can see the heating element is on the front face of that bladder. It compresses that heating element around your ankles and Achilles. Now, as I alluded to earlier, the midsole on these things houses the battery. It also has to maintain the structure of the boot with all that's going on the motherboard around your heel. We'll talk about that in a second. We actually talk about if these things actually work. So it is a little bit more, it almost feels like Renew foam. It feels like a very dense Renew foam. I did do the bounce height test on it, got 18 centimeters in the rear foot, then only 19 in the forefoot. And on the rear foot, there's an excuse. There's a battery under there with just a thin layer, like an insert of foam on top of it. Then in the forefoot, it's just foam. And so, yeah, I guess the battery, battery is worth 18 centimeters. But the interesting thing is that it is not uncomfortable by any means underfoot. I think it's because you're not really doing much in them, plus it's a rocker, and then you feel more of the therapeutic stuff around the ankle more, so you're not really paying attention to the bottom of the foot. Put it this way, it's not uncomfortable by any means, but it is a little bit more of a dense foam. And just quickly on the outsole tread, it is all lugs. It kind of looks like a Nike trainer in terms of running, really far decoupled tread. It's interesting that there wasn't more in here, because this can start to look a little bit rough. You can start to get this dirty here. So I'd say if you're gonna wear them, I'd probably keep them, I just wouldn't be going out into the grass and mud and stuff like that, because you can kind of get this foam a little bit dirty and just kind of worked a little bit. So like I said, not a big deal. They're more just meant for casual walking around. So all in all, yeah, really nothing bad, just kind of run of the mill. All right, but getting into the biggest question about the Hyperboot, are they worth the money? Do they actually do what they say? And is the actual technology stupid, or is it genius? It really comes down to the heel counter, because the heel counter on these things is what houses all the brains of the Hyperboot. And honestly, it's really interesting how they laid all this out to get all of the components to the Hyperboot around the heel counter in kind of like a half moon shape. Now, Hyperice and Nike advertise this boot as the warm-up to your warm-up. And what they say is that because they have those heating elements on top of the compressive bubbles, that they can use less heat and deliver it further into your tissues and penetrate further and more durably because of the use, at the same time, concomitantly, compression and heat. And that's what this boot is aiming to do. It is preparing your tissues to be stretched and to be fired faster than just doing a standard warm-up. And what they say is that they can get that temperature further into those tissues. They can get it high enough to where they actually can change the viscosity of the fluid in and around your tendons, the stuff that makes the tendons glide back and forth. And so that is what they say is allowing the tendons to get prepped to move better. They also say that it helps prep the joint fluid right in and around the ankle joint, the subtalar joint, so that that can be moved easier, right? So you can stretch that so there's less resistance to movement in the joint. So really, all in all, it's basically just breaking up a bunch of adhesions. And what I've heard them say is when you're at rest, the fluid in and around the tendons can become almost like sludge. And they want to make that fluid very easy, almost very runny, right? So that your tendons can move. You know, so there's no adhesions or barriers to movement. And so, you know, it does stand to reason that would work if you can get heat to penetrate further into the tissues, because if you read all the physical therapy literature, really anything, any textbook, anywhere, they'll say that heat is really hard to get to penetrate the tissue. Now, cold penetrates really well. So I did test it. I had these on. I had one on and one off. I did a session for 15 minutes. I had my wife, who's also a foot doctor, I had her measure my ankle dorsiflexion. And I did this a few times over a few days, and it was amazingly consistent. I have 2 degrees of dorsiflexion on my right side past it. You're supposed to, your ankle sits at 90 degrees, and so you're supposed to be able to get 10 degrees. I get 2 on my right, I get 4 on my left. And incredibly, that is consistent across the days. But what was also consistent is that if we had done this in the morning, I would get 1 degree more of dorsiflexion just doing nothing. I'd go sit down, put this on my right foot, not on my left. I would get 1 more degree of dorsiflexion after 15 minutes, which doesn't seem like a lot. But remember, you're supposed to get, your normal is 90, and you're supposed to get 10 degrees past that. So 1 more degree is 10% more dorsiflexion. So that's pretty good. That's a little more, for me not doing anything, right? I did literally nothing besides put this boot on, you get 10% more. So that's not terrible. What also happened is if we did it in the middle of the day, if I sat down, the right side, or whatever, you know, not the right side, but the side I used the boot on, would consistently still get 1 more degree of dorsiflexion, but my other side would lose a degree of dorsiflexion if I sat for 15 minutes. And so it really does show you that it does do what it says. It doesn't, put it this way, it's not gonna get you to 10 degrees automatically. It's not gonna make you Gumby, right? You're not gonna be with the Mr. Fantastic or whatever, just stretch all over the place. But wearing it does make a change. And just subjectively, I will say, when I was doing the one on, one off, going back and trying to do like an eccentric stretch afterwards, on the side I had it on, it just felt so easy to do. It was crazy how easy it was to do eccentric stretching. And then the side I wasn't doing on really kind of felt like I was like breaking through ice chips. And so I know it sounds like I'm gushing on about these as like a paid advertisement, but what I also noticed is that if I worked it a little bit on my other side, I eventually got them to the same levels of dorsiflexion. I had to do a little bit more work, but eventually my other side did equal, right? I got them equal, and that's because the heating is temporary, right? Once you take them off, your body starts equalizing. And if you're going right into activity, so say you wear the boot and then go right into activity, eventually you're gonna heat, you know, your tissue is gonna get heated enough, if you're playing hard enough, right, that everything's gonna start to equal out. And so, yes, it does give you a head start, and yes, it does feel incredible. I mean, if you have it on the highest heat setting, it does kind of start, you better wear a sock, it does kind of start to feel intense. But if you put it on like a lower heat setting and then the compression, I mean, I hate being touched. I don't like getting massages. I don't like having my foot touched for sure by anybody massaging anything, right? Just not a touchy-feely person. This felt out of this world. I mean, just for that alone, it's incredible. But in terms of just like what it's actually doing, to me, eventually you will start to equalize. It just jumpstarts you, right? I actually did a bunch of times where when I was doing reviews on shoes, I would take a heat gun reading of my feet, put these on 15 minutes, and then take another heat gun reading. And what I found was I got an average of 9.1 degrees Fahrenheit increase in temperature from before the 15-minute session until after, and that was really consistent on both sides. And then after a while, you know, the temperature starts dropping and dropping. The thing that was really interesting is that you get most of the heating kind of on the junction of your gastroc soleus, kind of where they become the Achilles tendon, and you get the least amount of heating right actually on the heel proper. Now, there are other issues with that because you don't get any heating in the forefoot. right? And the heating doesn't go super far along the medial longitudinal arch or underneath on like the big toe. And so, and there are also other things they can do in terms of compressive elements around the foot. Because the first thing I thought to myself in this thing before I got it was, this would be the best thing ever for people that suffer from big toe joint arthritis. Like this would just be a game changer, but it doesn't go up that far. You can even see on the heat readings, like the front part of my foot's a completely different color, right? Just because, and you can actually feel it when you're in the boot, especially at night around my house where it gets a little cooler at night because we have like the, hard flooring. And I just noticed like I can actually feel cold in my forefoot versus the rear foot because the rear foot was getting so hot. Now, in terms of my ankle moving, right? Like I have a broken ankle, so I always feel my one ankle a little more than the other. I'll tell you, in this boot, I don't. After I put it on, I do not. It feels great. Like I said, after a while, you can start to feel a little bit more for sure, but I think the thing with these is that, after kind of everything I test these out with and everything, yeah, they do work and they do what they say they're gonna do. Besides the subjective feelings of it, there are objective, tests I did that show it does work. It's just that if you're using them to work out, the effect, it's basically a bridging effect, right? Because the effects are kind of temporary, right? Because if you're working out, like I said, you're gonna get up to that level anyway. And so it is a great tool if you're someone that suffers from maybe a little more tightness, more adhesions. If you're someone that's had an Achilles rupture before, I think this is 100% a worthwhile investment for sure. If you're somebody with ankle arthritis, it's 100% a worthwhile investment. If you're somebody that's just like saying like, hey, do I need to buy it? Like nothing's wrong with me, do I need to buy it? If you want a good foot massage and if you got the money, then they're awesome. But if you don't, you can train. You can train your way through that. You can bridge yourself through it, right? With doing extra stretching, extra stuff. You can go into a sauna beforehand or, just do a slower warm up, right? So is it, do you need to go out and buy or go into debt to get them? Absolutely not. Are they something very cool to have, especially for the people, like I said, previous Achilles ruptures, previous perineal tendonitis or, adhesions around the perineals, post ankle sprains, people that had ankle sprain and have, scar tissue everywhere, previous ankle arthritis, previous ankle breaks. For those people, it could be a game changer for sure. Yeah, I think you just have to be the right person to really get the crazy benefit out of it that's worth the price tag. But I think for certain people, it is. So I would say all around, kind of genius. But like I said, if you don't feel like shelling out the money for these, it's not in your budget, it just doesn't match your needs, there are plenty of ways to slowly warm yourself up prior to activity. You just gotta give yourself a little bit more time to do it, but your body is an incredible engine and you can tune it up yourself. There are ways to do it without fun gadgets for sure. Honestly, that'd be a great marketing thing for Hyperice to do to get that out for free to show people what it takes to do the same thing these do. Hey, you know what, Hyperice, you wanna do it with me? I'd be happy to do it with you. That'd be a great collaboration, especially coming into the holidays. So you have my number, give me a call if you wanna do something like that. And if you wanna see some other stupid or genius stuff I've done, especially the over the shoe ankle brace, that has kind of become famous in the football world, but also you see people on the basketball and tennis courts on them. Make sure you click into this video right here. And if you do want to see what the future of Nike Air is, no, not this Air and the Air Bladder, but actual Nike Zoom and Air Max, make sure you click into this video right here. See you in the next one.